Imagine this like persistent collective memory of all your past campaigns, hypotheses,
Yeah,
experiments, results in the form of an agent.
it will be able to access somebody at 5 years back who's like historical earnings. That's the value, right?
This idea of like a living documentation architect that basically converts every decision, every workflow change, every meeting, every Slack thread into structured, browsable, auto-updated documentation layer.
This is so cool. I wish it existed. What is exciting to me, though, is the Agentic browser stuff that is up and coming. And they just asked the Agentic browser to set up a campaign, and it actually did a pretty good job of like drafting it.
What's up, everyone? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Aboli Gangreddiwar, Senior Director of Lifecycle and Product Marketing at Curator. In this episode, we explore self-healing data quality agents, campaign QA agents, a Hivemind memory curator, and AI browsers that could power living documentation. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from two of our awesome partners. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's Knak, and tell them we sent you. This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new warehouse native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. Aboli, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited to chat.
Yeah, likewise, Phil. I know we're trying this for the third time, so third time's a charm. Super excited. I hope the internet works well today.
Third time's a charm. I appreciate your patience on the tech side of things here. I probably overthink it sometimes, but really appreciate you bearing with me here. We got a fun episode for folks though. The upside of doing this for a third time is that we've improved some of the research on the episode side every time we've redone this. So we're chatting about the behind the scenes applications for AI agents today. A lot of the folks talk about growth and propensity models and personalization. As fun as some of those applications are, we're talking about behind the scenes operational stuff for marketing ops folks, like data quality things. And we're going to be covering and exploring a bunch of different agent use cases here. I don't know how many we're going to have a chance to cover, Aboli. So for folks listening or watching on YouTube, we'll in the description or the show notes, you can look at the chapters, jump up with a timestamp to a specific agent you're really curious about. But I wanted to start, Aboli, by maybe just like grounding ourselves a little bit in some definitions. When we say agentic infrastructure, what are some of the components here? Like we'll put up a table here for the folks watching on YouTube, but we've got like the data layer, the agent orchestration, the execution layer, feedback and learning, but there's also human in the loop sometimes. What are your thoughts on these components?
Yeah, definitely. I think for any organization or team or function, right, to build out any sort of agentic infrastructure, where you'd expect the agents to autonomously work and talk to each other and connect data with each other. I think there is sort of, you just said it, like the data layer, right, where um, everything needs access to data, right? So the agent's gonna need access to data too. And is your data in one place? Is whether it's your data warehouse, the Snowflake, Databricks, right? Like wherever that is, like that layer needs to exist. As you're thinking about creating agents or connecting them to each other. Then there is the agent orchestration. So how do these, agents talk to each other? And, my background is a lot on the lifecycle and product marketing. So if I were to take a lifecycle marketing use case, if I'm sending out an email campaign, right, like I could have an email copy agent, an email HTML coding agent, right? Um, how do I copy, say, like, how does my copy agent take that copy, like if there's a Figma agent that builds out the email or like visualizes the email or designs the email, and then there's the coding agent then that codes out the email. Like right now, I think um where a lot of teams are they're probably building out these agents individually, or like testing around it, but then you need an orchestration layer eventually for these agents to sort of has the copy to Figma, from Figma to the HTML building interface, right? So that it's all like autonomously done. And so I think at some point, right, that orchestration layer needs to exist. Um, then there is the execution layer, right? Like each of this agent needs to like do the tasks somewhere. And so that could be, right, like in the copy agent, well, it could be like a, just a custom GPT, right? Like executing within that, OpenAI, chat GPT interface and like writing the copy based on brand guidelines and whatnot. Or sometimes it could have to be connected with your marketing automation platform, right? Like, so that layer needs to be like thought through as well. And then finally, I guess not finally, there is the two other components. There is the feedback and learning, how does then data pass in and back and from these agents to one another, right? Like, how does like learning improve over time? And then finally, there is the human in the loop, right? Like, how does the copy agent make sure the human or the marketer is checked the copies on brand, like it makes sense, it's legal approved and whatnot. And then from there, like they sort of okay. And so, how does like all of it work? I I think uh I think we are in that evolution phase where I think people are playing around with like one or two agents and like seeing, hey, like can an agent individually solve like one thing for me? But I think as we think about like building sort of that agentic infrastructure, like the connectivity of all of these things is like gonna be really important. um, I think the last two things I'll say is, there are platforms out there like N8N, Zapier. I know several people on the podcast have spoken about it in the past too, where some of that connectivity, right, these tools are enabling, that connectivity if you need a Slack connected to a Google Sheet for your data analysis and like reporting, right? Like some of that orchestration could happen in those tools. And I know the MCP model context protocol, right? Like that is, another mechanism potentially for tools to like talk to each other and like orchestrate. Um, so yeah, I think there is a lot of technology and tools, out there that is like evolving pretty fast, and something I think marketers should keep an eye out and figure out, what fits best for their use case and their company.
Love it. I appreciate the breakdown there. Yeah, maybe we can start diving into some of these. I want to maybe say to start, like Aboli and I, neither of us are like experts in AI agents. Like we're not building any of these tools. We're not developers or engineers in this space. So the point of this is really like exploring what exists today, what could be used, and what's useful for marketing ops pros that want something that's a bit more behind the scenes. And maybe you haven't heard of some of these applications. So the first one that I wanted to explore, Aboli, is autonomous data quality agents. So, everyone talks about data quality because like garbage in, garbage out. If you give AI crap, like it's going to give you a polished version of crap. Like everyone understands the importance of data quality. There's a few data hygiene agents that I've seen pop up that claim to be this like thing that auto fixes 200 plus common data quality problems based on patterns that they've mapped from existing customers they have. So some of the product marketing copy, and you'll appreciate some of this stuff here on the websites that I've researched. So you plug in the agentic solution to your warehouse or your existing data layer, so you don't have to like rebuild anything for these tools. They kind of like meet you wherever you're kind of living.
Hmm.
And the agents basically watch and check clean data as data is changing, new records are
Hmm.
coming in, and they're on the execution layer, as I understand it, meaning they work instantly, proactively. You don't need to like approve everything. Maybe they're giving you reports after like a problem happened, but for the most part, the system keeps improving as it has more data and learns from corrections. What are your thoughts here? Like, have you seen some of these in action? What does that actually look like in terms of implementation?
Um, so I haven't come across these tools, so thanks for exposing them to me. What I do realize the importance of those though. For example, more recently, I was playing around a little bit with Snowflake's Copilot, which allows potentially like a person who's not an analyst to like prompt, hey, like, can you pull me a list of so and so users who meet so and so criteria? And I think it was really good in terms of like understanding, what I'm trying to like find out. But I think it was like looking at the wrong tables, the wrong fields. And I think that's where I feel like if it had the right metadata, right, the proper data dictionary, or if I also had access to some of that, within internal company documentation, I think I'd be able to like navigate that and like ask it to correct the tables it's looking at, right? So I feel like there I could see a huge application of it. I feel like marketers, right, like, or our ops teams too, right, like will often rely on the BI analytics partners to sort of pull in like those ad hoc SQL queries. But with Copilot, you could, as long as it does have like the right data quality, the right metadata. And so I think going back to the autonomous data quality agents, I think if there are tools out there that sort of uh, help sort of cleanse the data, like, it's like unique rows, unique users, right? Like all of that in one place, I could see like how valuable that is.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So maybe some of the folks listening are just like, we're doing a lot of if this and that like work inside of DBT and our data warehouse to do some of this automatically, but like through rule-based workflows. Like a lot of this stuff exists for a long time. But some of the websites, and we'll shout out some of these tools here, but like these agents seem to be operating by using pre-mapped patterns. So similar to like if you were doing this like as a workflow, they're like you can give it best practices and learned experience, but the benefit of these tools is that like you're not the only customer using them. A bunch of other customers, maybe similar industries and diverse customer sources to basically keep the model learning or the tool learning, and they can fix data problems that maybe you're not even thinking about, you don't have rules for yet. And all this with like very little human intervention. So the features that they're calling it is like data issue detection, auto generated rules. So you don't have to like create those rules, auto resolution workflows. So sometimes there's like a conflict. We see a record that's matching, the ID resolution rule kicks in, but we don't know which record wins. So there's like some work there. There's stuff like self-healing pipelines. But anyways, there's a good overlap of this with like existing tools in the data observability space. And we've chatted about this on the show. We had a couple founders that are building in that space. Some of these companies are actually moving away from data observability as a term, and they're calling it agentic data management as a
Mhm.
category. So one of the examples is an Indian startup called exceldata.io. Gartner actually has a category on their site, a quadrant for augmented data quality solutions. We got big enterprise players in this space like Informatica, Click. But one of the leaders in that quadrant is DQ Labs. They're an agentic AI data management platform. So we'll drop a bunch of these like links in there if folks want to like check them out. We're exploring, because obviously there's like tools that exist that claim to be able to do this. There's a cool startup called Delpha that raised a seed round this year. They're calling it Autonomous Data Quality Agent. So they're Delpha.io. They're a French startup. I also found this company called Elation that has a suite of agents. So we'll chat about them for some of the other agents we're chatting about, but they're like agentic data intelligence platform. One of their agents is a data quality agent. So a lot of people claim to be doing this. I've never played around with it, so I'm excited to get my hands on some of these. I got two consulting clients that are in this like exploratory phase with AI tools, and so these might be some cool use cases there. So it exists. Like we're not talking about something that like, oh, this would be cool, like some of these other agents that we're chatting about later.
Yeah. No, I think that's like a great exposure to all the tools out there. I think that as a marketer on the business side and like figuring out, the whole AI landscape, one of the things I've been actively doing is just demoing tools, like listening to vendors. Like I think there are like just like listening and like what is possible out there can like make you think. Like you don't have to necessarily go and buy those tools, but there might be some adjacent solutions you could build in house. So that's what I keep telling everyone in the space. Like look out for new tools. There's a lot of like cool and exciting stuff out there. I think to your point, Phil, like and I've listened to like other podcast guests, right? Like it all depends on the use case, right? So yes, for people who like data quality is an issue, I think this is like certainly worth looking into. But I also like when I talk to like other marketers, fears in the space, for marketers, right? Like the more common use case that I've heard is sort of the data activation part, which might be a good segue into the data activation agentic use case where, you know, quality may not be as big of an issue. The data is, out there pretty fine. Of course, data is not perfect, but having access to that data and like actioning upon it has been challenging. And I think that's where uh, on the marketing automation platform side, we've sort of evolved from, building audiences using SQL to like drag and drop filters to now uh, prompt based potentially, right? Like audience
Hmm.
building with some of the newer tools out there. And I think in terms of data access to, right, there in the past have been here in the space for a decade. Like earlier, I used to remember like for every single field that I used to need to like personalize the emails, right? I mean, it still exists today, right? Like there is a heavy reliance on the BI data engineering team to sort of make sure that calculated field, that attribute exists. Then like doing some work to like make it available in a format that fits the marketing automation tools format. And then, right, like there is some process of like getting that data in the marketing automation tool. And I think now we're seeing a lot of not just like, I think tools, I would say like general tools without like the AI part, right? Like, which is making it easier to like activate data and like having marketers access that data like easily and like maybe like one click import the field into the ESP. But then now there is a lot of, and but that, I think what I have, from what I've seen, that still like requires some BI engineering, help and like figuring out the tables are mapped and like talking to each other. But now I'm like seeing a rise of now the AI agentic tools, which like really make it like a prompt base. Hey, like I need so and so field. Can you like calculate it, create that field, and then map it to my ESP? So all of those like multi steps are happening in one go, which is like super exciting as a marketer to be able to like access that data without that BI ticket and like getting it into our ecosystem. So I'm super bullish on that part because we all talk about like personalization, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about it. Um, but again, for personalization, do we need that access to data like pretty fast? So yeah, curious, what have you seen? Like, do you feel bullish on that use case, and what have you heard?
Yeah, data activation is really interesting because, just a couple of years ago, the whole category was just called reverse ETL. Like it's just recently just been kind of rebranded as data activation. Makes more sense. Like it's what we're kind of doing with reverse ETL tools in the first place. But yeah, like I've been a user on the in-house side of this like latest wave of technology where we were using modern marketing friendly UI drag and drop builders, and it removed a lot of that SQL from the picture. And so, all these reverse ETL tools that call themselves data activation, a lot of them are lumped into like bigger customer data platforms now. But a lot of these tools, like you said, like still need analysts or engineers. Like I was always, I could always like stretch it, but I always got to a point where I was like, like I still need that other thing out of the warehouse, or we need to calculate that field now. It's not perfect in the way that it is, or we need to like tweak the format of it before we can push it into our automation platform. So you kind of teased this out a little bit, but these like new tools in the agentic AI space are thinking about like using natural language to skip the SQL part and like altogether data engineers. Like I'm still kind of skeptical about that part there. But some of the claims on the websites that I've kind of researched are like some of the features or the potential use cases there are like gather and understand data from different sources, analyze and process that data, figure out what needs to be done next, take action automatically based on the analysis that's been done from the agents. So like activating marketing campaigns, generating reports for you, updating customer segments for you automatically because there's a new data field that came into the database. And they do all this without constant human help or manual coding or SQL like updates, and they're following
Mm.
goals or instructions given to you in plain language. So it sounds like theoretical in a way. I know there's some tools in the space doing it today. Some of the examples are, wide variety of Martech and data. Like we just talked about data quality, and I feel like that kind of fell into one category. Data activation overlaps with a bunch of different areas, right? Like got data warehouses and data lakes like Snowflake and Azure and IBM Watson. Snowflake has a data science agent. You kind of talked about that, like they're using NLP to democratize access to data, or that's kind of the language around it. But yeah, like there's a lot of overlap with reverse ETL tools, composable CDP, Growth Loop, for example. We just had a couple episodes with folks in their team. They're like they have an audience agent and a journey agent that are automating some of this stuff. But I think that, you named Zapier in your previous answer there. Like there's a lot of overlap with iPaaS vendors when it comes to activation also, like Trade.ai, Workato, Zapier, they fall in this category too. Like we had Trey on the show. They completely pivoted away from visual builders or they pivoted away from being just an iPaaS to a visual builder to manage AI agents. So the space is changing a lot. And I think that there's even like other categories like content management platforms that are playing in this space, like a content stack. They have like a real-time data activation solution, but they're almost like a bigger enterprise like DXP platform. But there's like product analytics tools like Amplitude that have data activation features, warehouse native capabilities. So yeah, it's a weird one, data activation, because like there's so much overlap with all these tools. Like I wouldn't be surprised if in like a couple of years, like what does this data activation category look like? It's just like
Mm.
it's solution. It's not a category anymore, and it's just lumped into a bunch of existing Martech.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think um, um, the part that marketers do after they get access to the data is also now having, right, like personalization agents or decisioning agents, right? And so I think there is sort of a question to be asked on, yeah, like, do you spend time on like, activating data one at a time, or really focus on some of the personalization agents that, you give one-time access to like all your data, and then like it figures out, right, like um what's the like content mix and like subject lines, right, combination, like what do you send? And so I do think like right now for the next 1 or 2 years, like, yeah, we should like it's keep saying like use case specific, like where are you spending the most time on, which is the biggest opportunity to like bring a step function change, either in operational efficiency or like revenue generation, and like sort of prove that out and go from there.
Hmm.
Um, but I think just to like close the loop on data activation, I will say one other trend that I've observed. Um, there is another startup in the space called Sortment, and there are like probably other players out there that I'm not exposed to, but they do claim to sort of being able to like activate the data without potentially a data engineer. But what's even more interesting to me is like many startups that I am talking to are offering to sort of co-build some of these like journey agents or like um audience building agents, right, where I think from a business standpoint, there might be like a resource crunch internally, right? On, hey, am I going to be able to get like AI engineering resources to build out my specific use case? And I think that is where there is sort of like like a conversation to be had about build versus buy. But then a lot of these startups are like now approaching saying, hey, like we don't have this agent, but we could co-build this with you for your specific use case, which is like kind of exciting, but also scary because like we're kind of the guinea pig. But I am like entertaining, or like even at least discovering and exploring, because even if we might not end up building, like at least it gives us like exposure into like what I earlier said, like what's possible. So yeah, really, uh, really interesting out there.
Yeah, free shout out for Priya there at Sortment. We were chatting by email a little bit, and he was kind of updating me on like when they started, they're like almost competing with customer engagement platforms and automation tools, right? And you said that they've really positioned themselves now to like, we don't compete with ESPs and customer engagement tools anymore. We're kind of like an add-on, and we're the first AI data agent built for lifecycle marketers. So it's always fun like looking at the product marketing
Yeah.
messaging for some of these folks. And I know you guys are friends, so maybe you've gotten feedback on some of the messaging there. But it's an interesting space for sure. I think is the right call to not necessarily go head to head against like some of these bigger platforms. The question mark I have there is like, what happens when some of the bigger players in the space just like roll out a data agent built for lifecycle marketers, and it's already ready to go in the tool itself, and they're an add-on tool. And so anyways, the space is really interesting activation in itself. The other agent that we wanted to kind of explore together is this idea of a quality assurance agent, and maybe we can lump in compliance agent here as well, because I think these kind of go hand in hand. And our friends on the legal side and the data governance side will be happy with the advancement in this space here. Agentic AI can revolutionize the campaign QA process specifically. So not just like QAing a bunch of different things, but if we chat about like the campaign quality assurance process, they're automatically checking code, copy, links. If you're rendering right across different devices, like right now a lot of teams are doing manual reviews. A lot of cool tools like Knack, sponsor on the show, that does a lot of work on like translation and getting everyone together on one platform to approve templates. And there's some really cool work on like QA agents that are validating and doing some of this work for you. It acts as kind of like an intelligent co-pilot, and gives marketers like real-time feedback, and you can reduce costs on like some of the QA side of things. There's a lot of like non-AI solutions for this stuff, but like, do you think there's added value in an agentic solution here that can help with campaign QA?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that like anybody can build, at least like a POC or a MVP, right? Like a custom GPT, I know everyone knows about it, or like I think Gemini has gems, or Claude has projects, sort of the equivalent of it. But I think like at the very basic, anybody should be able to sort of feed your QA checklist, your campaign doc, your email proofs, or SMS push copy, whatever that is, and like have it sort of do that initial review at least. Like, are your UTM parameters coded in properly, or is the because sometimes people will have like the brand guidelines and email creative guidelines and the padding and all of that, right? Like, does it like all like work as expected? So I think that like that has been a low hanging fruit. I've heard like in our workshops, some of the workshops like I've been doing on the lifecycle humanity side, we've been doing a lot of workshops around it, and people have found it like a simple use case, a repetitive use case, low hanging fruit. Like, people should definitely look at it. I think where the next level of the QA part, like there's two components, I think, at least from a lifecycle marketing standpoint, right? There is we build all these like complex journeys. I don't think there is anything, at least the current marketing automation platforms that I've seen might have like a journey QA specific thing, right? Like, here's the branching logic and all of that working as expected. So like, would love to see more exploration there. Um, and then I think where I think there might be a lot of opportunities for like companies like Email and Acid and Litmus. Again, this is very email specific too, but again, today, like, why do we check the rendering, right, of like emails and all these platforms? It's like, as a human, I visually check, hey, is the padding off? But then technically, these are just pixels, and like, I just want 2 inches here, right? Like, I think all of those guidelines could be technically fed, and like, so I think like whatever the human eye looks for, the AI could look for, like it's math and like proportions and ratios. I think there is like, because today, right, like the most marketers will still send out tests to these platforms and check
Yeah.
how it's like rendering across iPhone, and I think that's where it'll be cool to see like how some of those QA use cases evolve there and save time.
Yeah, it's a classic anxiety written practice for email marketers. Like, how's my email gonna render? And Microsoft Outlook, like, damn it, it works everywhere except for Outlook. Freaking Outlook. This episode was brought to you by Mammoth Growth. Ever feel like your data is lying to you? Like you're making big bets on numbers you don't even trust? Everyone talks about garbage in, garbage out, but almost no one actually fixes the garbage. That's where Mammoth Growth comes in. They're the fastest AI-powered data team on the planet. They build production-ready data architecture that turns your fragmented customer data into one unified, trustworthy source of truth, fast. Most companies spend months trying to get answers. Mammoth Growth compresses weeks of analytics engineering into minutes using a multi-agent AI workflow. No rework, no broken dashboards, just clean, reliable data models you can act on with confidence. Calendly, Siemens, TED, and hundreds of other brands trust Mammoth Growth to fuel measurable growth. Check them out at mammothgrowth.com to see how they make bad data disappear.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero.
2 field forms. Complete context, instant scheduling. Finally, you get to pick all 3 without a single line of code. Introducing native enrichment by Revenue Hero. Plug in Clearbit, Crust Data, Apollo, or stack all 3. Enrich all the data you need instantly on submit. Stack your enrichment providers, waterfall your way to clarity. Determine qualification and meeting routing based on enriched information. Layer it onto your current distribution logic. Book more meetings with your qualified buyers. Get started at revenuehero.io.
But yeah, kind of related to this is the compliance agent space. So like QA agent, we mean like double checking stuff like links and is everything working properly. But on the compliance side, I know like you work in a highly regulated industry at Credible. I had a stint at a startup that was in health tech. So, you know, it's my first taste of PHI and PII and all that world. And it's quite different from just like B2B SaaS. And in a lot of those like highly regulated industries, there's a lot of companies that have like compliance reviews as kind of like a major bottleneck, especially when you're like in growth marketing or life cycle and you're trying to do something fun and exciting. So this idea of like an agentic compliance AI could help speed up some of this process. Like they can come in and pre-screen campaigns for risky language. They help you enforce like legal brand guidelines. They flag improper data use, even maintain like audit trails for approval. So right now, when you're trying to get approval from the legal team, like we want to do this crazy campaign idea, instead, like there's like you trigger some of these agents to do some of that upfront research work for you. And when you're like presenting that for approval, maybe it's already done kind of behind the scenes by like embedding compliance rules directly into the campaign creation process. And they get like, you get instant feedback instead of like waiting for days or for the legal person to get back to you. I don't know if you've seen like tools in that space, or what are your thoughts there? I only found one like when I was researching. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones, but there's this company, a startup called Clean Lab, cleanlab.ai. They have what they're calling like detection agents and remediation agents that are collaborating with your existing agents, and they ensure safety and compliance. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on that space?
No, I think it's a huge opportunity for regulated industries like fintech. I hear to write like, we like, you could always also try building out a custom GPT and like feed all like your internal like advertising rules and all of that. That's like one way, but there are like a lot of limitations on the custom GPT in terms of like the audit trails and like who has the accountability, and so there are, I think, things that need to be figured out, but there is potentially like a MVP path to like at least getting, like with compliance stuff, it's either you can do it you can't do it, or it's like a gray area, like
It's so
let's
true.
evaluate the risk versus the. So I think the yes and no cases are like straightforward and don't like that's something like the GPT could potentially throw out. But the gray area is where then you need to go a little bit back and forth. And so hypothetically, if there is like if at least you get the yes and no use cases out the door, then like that could be a big win. But I have come across a company in the space that I spoke to recently called HelloWarrant.com. I don't know if you've heard of it. The company is founded by a fintech marketer, actually, who comes from prior, fintech companies like Brex, and she was in the product marketing space, understands the issues, and yeah, they've been trying to build out sort of a compliance AI agent where a marketer could go in, upload the assets, they would give back feedback, and then you could then kick it off to like your compliance team for like additional review. But they have the audit trails, right? Like, all of that. I think the company is pretty new. I think, again, and legal and compliance in itself, like, yeah, do you want to have your audit trails out there, right? That is another question. So I think compliance agents are going to be a little tricky, to be honest, just given like the risk and like how much how much exposure do you want to have, etc. But there are tools out there that I'm definitely exploring, and yeah, Warrant was one of them.
Yeah, we'll link it to hellowarrant.com. I'm just like reading this, putting my like compliance shoes on. Warrant's proprietary AI automates brand compliance, legal, and partner reviews for fintech, real estate, and insurance. And like, I'm just like having a hard time picture these tools like convince the legal team to implement these because there's like a self-preservation factor in all of these, right? Like they're basically saying like, hey, we'll replace your legal team, or at least like we'll help speed up their lives. And but as soon as you get into like that, like you need less people on the legal team angle to this, but the legal team needs to be your champion to implementing this. Like it's just this weird self-preservation space, right? And you need someone that's really thinking innovatively, who doesn't care about creating systems and automations in place that like automates himself or herself out of a job. Like those are the champions you need for some of these tools to be like successfully implemented within companies, eh?
Yeah. But Phil, so is true for I feel like every AI use case,
Yeah,
not just
yeah, that's
legal.
fair.
Like the whole we're talking about marketing operations, AI agents, and if you build out a journey agent, you build out a QA agent, then you're probably like gonna lead fewer people, right? Or but I think but the way I view it is businesses, like good businesses always keep growing. There's always more to do. So the way I view it is like instead of hiring like two more headcounts in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm not gonna need that headcount. I just, I'm gonna be able to operate, within the existing team and sort of become more efficient within the existing team. I think that's how like I view it. And I think if you don't do it, somebody else is gonna do it. Right? Like, so it's right. How do you stay ahead of the game? Like, how do you um sort of start thinking about this so that you could be that, AI orchestrator in the company if you feel like your job is at risk. On the compliance AI like side, I feel like the compliance team is always swamped with things. Like they just have so much
It's
to
true.
do versus so like for the at least the companies that I've been at, fintech, yeah, I feel like they would love actually this kind of a solution, but it's just like, yeah, like the intricacies of audit trails and like all of that. So
Yeah. Yeah, we're friends with compliance on every team. It's funny. It makes me think of the episode we had with the VP of Growth at Well Simple. Like we did the teaser for his episode, but he said at one point he's like he was talking about like crazy growth ideas, and he's like, if legal likes your campaign or is instantly like giving you the thumbs up for it, like it's not a good campaign.
yeah,
Like your goal should be to get legal to immediately say like, no, we can't do this. Like if they say that, like it's probably a good idea
fair.
and you should push it.
Yep.
Let's chat about this other one. So this is I don't know if this actually exists yet. So this is me kind of like thinking out loud here and curious to get your thoughts on this idea of like a Hivemind memory curator. So when I worked in house, especially at WordPress, we had this like really cool data team that was doing a lot of like in-house tooling for experimentation and like teaching and training. And so we had a bunch of like experiments going out all the time. But we lacked this like central repository for saving results of experiments and then like doing stuff with those after, or just like feeding that into a machine somewhere that like keeps learning and like it shares that with other teams. So I've been like meditating on this idea of just like, lots of models do a really good job at taking input, recommending an output, and reinforcement learning obviously like helps with a lot of automation around or optimization around this space. But sometimes like operationalizing all of those learnings from cross experiments and all of your systems and into like micro learnings from experiments is really hard. And I've like, maybe there's companies doing this. I'm curious to get your thoughts, but like imagine this like persistent collective memory of all your past campaigns, hypotheses,
Yeah.
experiments, decisions with rationale, with like empathy, emotional context, real outcomes, results in the form of an agent. And it helps you eliminate repeat mistakes. You're saving time by not doing experiments that you've already run. Then you can make the argument of like, well, it's a different time. Like maybe it's going to get different results. But just like automating campaign debriefs, you're enhancing like cross-team learning, drawing patterns from different teams within the org. I couldn't find a tailor-made solution for this. Like most of my research led to like products like iPass or Mind Studio is one that kind of came up. But what are your thoughts there, Aboli?
Yeah, I think that would be a dream to have as a marketer. I think to be able to access somebody at credible, a marketer at credible, like I don't know, 5 years back was like historical learnings. That's the value, right? Like, why do you want to retain employees? Is because obviously they have a lot of like historical knowledge about what works, what doesn't. Um, well, I think I'm excited about Atlassian's Rovo product that they're pushing on, which is supposed to be like, like Confluence and like is Jira is where like a lot of companies will operate, right, in terms of their tickets and BI tickets, test results, and then like documenting like campaign documents, etc. So I'm actually, and then Google has like, Gemini embedded within like Google Docs. Like, so whatever, like, or I haven't used Notion, but like, I'm sure like they might probably have a similar equivalent of it. But I actually think some of this would be accelerated by the, LLM models behind these like Atlassians and like Google Suite of the world, where if we are as marketers storing and like documenting everything to the T in one place, like one's doing it in Confluence, others doing it in Notion, like one's doing it in Asana. Like I think as long as it's in one place, like I am kind of bullish. I've looked at like some of the videos from Rovo and seeing like what like you can prompt it to create more documentation. Like I could see like where I could just ask like some of these AI, like I think Rovo is supposed to be a chat agent too. Like I could ask Rovo that, hey, like how, like I'm thinking of this idea, like what can you find from existing documentation or like test results that could support and or not support this idea. Um, so yeah, but I haven't, apart from that, I haven't seen like, yeah, any other tools. I think where a lot of tools are building in this space is sort of those personalization agents, right? Like they're saying that, hey, like we'll take this memory, store it, do reinforcement learning, and then like personalize the experiences for your users. Obviously, what that takes away is like a marketer's ability to access those learnings or like figuring out what worked, what doesn't. Um, but I think in this world, in the next couple, like 1, 2, 3 years, at least I see a space for your like Hivemind memory curator kind of a place, right? Because there is, and especially larger companies, larger marketing teams, 100, 200 people marketing orgs, like I could see like, somebody's testing something in email and somebody's testing something in like meta ads, and like, are they talking to each other? Like I could see like huge value in something like
Mhm.
this.
Yeah, I feel like one of the counter arguments to this, I'm like talking myself out of it, is this like there's a big trend of platforms that are basically saying instead of a human coming up with an experiment and then running the experiment test, like you should have a system of always on experiments, especially for email. Like we have now access, like there's some tools that folks I've chatted with on the show that are doing this already. Like there's no human coming up with like a segment of people and like a campaign idea and sending those out. They just have like a library of messages and content offers and then a
Yeah.
huge system in their data warehouse of people to message to and a model that like predicts the likelihood that someone will respond well to a certain message at a given time based on what they've done, and then the machine just like sends those messages out to those people, and there's always experiments going out behind the scenes, so there's never a campaign getting launched to a certain subset of people without there being a holdout. So you're always comparing it to people not getting it, so you're always getting like incremental impact on everything that you're doing. So, the counter argument there is like, what's the point of a hive mind with like all the results of experiments? And it really just gives you data to like do another experiment. Like what you should be doing instead
Right.
is having always on experiments for all of your campaigns, at least like stuff that's digital over like some of the channels that you control. I don't know. Like, it feels super far fetched for some teams, especially in enterprise that are a bit slower. But I've chatted with some folks that are like using some of these products, and they're just like, yeah, this is the future, and the future is now for some of these companies.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is definitely a big spike in sort of the personalization or decisioning agent companies, especially in the lifecycle marketing space. Many companies are definitely pushing for that now. But I've also heard that some of these like tests can end up being so complex. uh especially in like larger organizations where there might be another product experiment like going on, and then you're like running this experiment on top of it, and like the number of like variations there could be, and just the room for error is like so high. So I think there is still like, I think that it is I'm definitely bullish on that, but I just haven't heard like, oh, super like awesome, like this is working kind. It's like, I think it's still in that
Hmm.
POC experimentation phase.
Yeah.
um but love the idea of like always on, experimentation. um I think that's one of the, like how we do experiments traditionally is, right, you launch something, wait for stat sig, then like take a next bunch of creatives, put it through legal, then like right, like launch. So I can see the value in like something like, always on. Obviously, like regulated industries, my when I go out and like explore these POCs, my concern, and I'm sure the legal and compliance team would also be like, how do we know what variations and combinations of like copy are we sending to each user? Are those combinations going to be compliant? Like, what if it sends something like that just doesn't make sense? So I think, yeah, I think those are, all the things that we'll need to figure out.
Yeah, it's funny we're talking about the experimentation space and like StatSig you just mentioned, like it just reminded me that StatSig, the company, the A/B testing tool, was actually recently acquired by OpenAI for like 1.1 billion. And I was like trying to figure out why. Like I was shocked by why did an LLM purchase primarily like a product focus experimentation tool. And the acquisition potentially was like strategic to bring their founder on as like OpenAI's technology officer of apps, kind of reflecting OpenAI's ambition to like strengthen some of the
Yeah.
areas around product engineering, enterprise AI. So it might be less of like the we're going to build something for experimentation and more about like we want some of the human capital behind that. But do you remember seeing that? Like, were you kind of surprised by that acquisition?
I do remember seeing it on LinkedIn. I am not super close to like how Statsig works, but I think if it's a product experimentation tool, like I'm wondering if OpenAI is, um, I mean, I think as they grow as a company, right, they're probably figuring out like the specific use cases. Enterprise companies are going out and like buying and spending dollars on other companies, and like if they're ultimately using OpenAI's LLM model on the back end, like can OpenAI offer that product? And it's right. It's like to some extent, I think there is going to be a suite of products that OpenAI will offer. Like Google offers all these like adjacent products, and so maybe OpenAI is trying to build on that. But now I'm like using custom GPTs for data analysis, but maybe OpenAI builds out its own. And I think that's what we see in the Martech space too, right? Where the offer fit praise, acquisition. It's to your point, right? Like, yeah, there might be these smaller companies building out these agents, but what if like a bigger automation platform builds out an agent? But it is likely that these bigger companies could acquire some of these individual like data agent or journey agent, right? Like these kinds of companies, because I think there's a lot of nuance in like building out each of these agents, right? When I was just exploring the journey building agent potentially, there's just so many nuances, right? Like if you're editing an existing journey, how do you like figure out the branching out logic? Like it still need access to like all the data to write the branching out logic, right? So it's just like so specialized. So I could see like why like a bigger sales force might not be able to figure it out, but like, a smaller player might be. Um, so yeah.
And then they just get acquired. Bigger shark eats the little fish.
Yeah.
Such as the cycle of startups and Martech. We're all familiar with that one. So yeah, there you go. Hivemind, memory, curator, free product idea, OpenAI, StatSig. Let's make it happen. Marketing ops folks would love it. We'll do one more, Aboli. I think the bane of existence, aside from data quality and like getting sales and marketing to get aligned together, marketing ops folks live and breathe documentation. And, nothing gets done without documentation first, or, someone leaves and you had like your whole Martech stack built on top of one person, and now you're just like, I wish we had invested more in documentation. I'm curious to ask you about this idea of like a living documentation architect agent or documentation AI agent, like whatever. I'm not a product marketer. Like, have you seen agents that basically convert every decision, every workflow change, every meeting, every Slack thread, every like structured, browsable, auto updated documentation layer? You basically have this like SOP, the campaign playbooks, platform configs, like they're all staying accurate by default without anyone having to manually document or write anything or update anything. It's just kind of all living behind the scenes, maybe more like ambient computing style a little bit. Like, I don't know how this would work in practice, but this is a dream for marketing ops folks. Like, no more outdated Confluence pages or tribal knowledge loss. What are your thoughts there?
Um, Everything you explain is like, oh, this is so cool. I wish it exists. But no, I haven't seen. I think I agree. Like documentation is a big use case, and like no marketer like likes to spend time on it. Right? It's like, this is the last thing I want to work on. Um, and so I think I haven't seen anything, but I think like with where some of the Atlassian like product build is going with Rovo and all of that, I think that could. I don't think it'll be like as visionary as you've explained, because of like how fragmented like our day to day like tech stack is, right? Like my Slack messages and the Google Suite is different, and then Atlassian, and like they're not connected. But if everything was like sometimes we'll use Zoom, but if everything was like within the Google ecosystem, like Google Docs, like I could see like how all of it's like talking to each other, and Google can build out the product, but we use Slack, right, which is not a Google product, right? So um that's why I'm like a little like, is that gonna be even possible? But I think uh, what is exciting to me though is the agentic browser stuff that is up and coming, and I'm like, I feel like I question every single AI use case or like how it's done with like what I've seen with agentic browsers, where somebody had demoed like they just opened up like whatever B2B marketing platform they use to like set up campaigns, and they just asked the agentic browser to set up a campaign, and it actually did a pretty good job of like drafting it. And I was like, okay, like what happens to the journey agent, like, or if the agentic browser is able to pick up all of these things with like very little context, like, and that's just like, this is not even year one of agentic browsers, like where does it all go? So the living point being like the living documentation architect, right? Like if everything is still happening within the browser ecosystem where you have the Slack and like even if you're like in Fragment, like I could see the agentic browser playing that role. Um, but no, I haven't seen anything quite to that level exist in the market yet.
Yeah, the browser stuff is really exciting. It reminds me, like, because you had a great point about like the biggest obstacle for a documentation agent is just like how many tools, how many fragmented workflows and systems are part of our day to day, and like auto logging changes from all of those day to day. Like, it's just not feasible unless it lives like on a different layer than on the tool layer. Our first episode this year was with Austin Hay, and he's building a CRM today. But he used to like he created the Martech course at Reforge. Like, he's the visionary in the space, and he talked a lot about this idea of ambient computing as kind of the future of agents. Like, right now, a lot of agents are workflow based, goal based, and they're specific to one, two, three, or a couple tools. And with MCP, they kind of tie into some other stuff. But he talked about this idea of like ambient computing, where something that just like intuitively knows everything that you do because it has access
Yeah.
to like the operating system level. So we don't have to like worry about connecting to Slack and connecting to Google Calendar and Asana because it's connected to your OS. And so like it's already, I don't know if tracking you is the right word
Yeah.
there, but I don't know, it kind of works by like embedding AI directly in your OS and giving it real-time access to like all of your files, all of your apps, all of your workflows, and it gets like to understand the context. It can automate tasks across different tools. We're getting a bit more like speculative future here, but I don't know, like some folks immediately are just like giving an agent access to my OS, like forget about it. Like, I'm using that work computer to log into my personal finances. Like, I don't want an agent to have
Yeah.
access to that, so that it gets kind of dicey really quickly.
Oh yeah. I would I think the amount of people who are like skeptical about it's a big number. It's not like 1 out of 10. I think maybe 3 to 4 people out of 10 are like worried about, and I would be too in general. Like I think I'm generally okay with I don't know uploading my lab results into ChatGPT, but I think the moment right it like starts like yeah like my personal finance right like
Yeah.
all of that I start I am also like wanted like I wouldn't even want to try the tool. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, should I even try it? And like, what does it get access? Right? I think all of this is so new. Um, but yeah, super excited on the AI browser. I'm keeping an eye out on it and seeing how it evolves.
Awesome. Aboli, this is super fun. I feel like it's a long time in the making. I'm glad we got through it today. Hopefully folks found a new list of tools or potential use cases, or some of these ones I think are a bit more exploratory, especially the last couple ones there. But I got one last question for you, Aboli. You're obviously a lifecycle marketer, product marketing leader. You're also a newsletter author, community builder, keynote speaker, and at home you're a mom of here. Sorry. At home, you're also, I don't know why I had written it like that. It says you're also an avid mom of an
I
18-month-old. I don't know why I wrote. You're also a mom of an 18-month-old, and you're a jogger, a yoga. You do yoga, you're hiking. Wow. Can you tell I've recorded 2 episodes back to back, and we're at the end here? But one question we ask everyone on the show is, how do you remain happy and successful in your career, and how do you find balance between all the stuff you're working on while staying happy?
um I think for me it's um like relationships and like connection like friends, family connections, right? All of that like holds a very important like everything I do, like I go back to like why I'm doing it before my family, spending more time with them. And I think that's what like really keeps me going is yeah, like why am I earning money? It's so that, I have a quality time, like good quality of life with my family, being able to like my parents are in India, so like yeah, can I make more trips, go back home, right? Like that's really, I think that's what keeps me going. I do think like like the yoga, the all of that like actually helps balances it a little bit, right? Where I'm like too stressed, I'll just go out for a slow jog. Like I think that I'm sure everyone knows how important like exercising and all of that is and why it's important for your brain. Um, but yeah.
I love it. Yeah, great reminder to get outside, touch some grass, get some sunlight. I think it's easier to said than done. Like especially like when you work from home, like it's easy to forget the importance of going outside, moving around. Like I spent like last like 5 6 years working remotely, and I just like got so unhealthy by like working on the couch, like barely moving around except for like dropping my daughter off at daycare in the morning. And like health just like caught up to a point where I was just like, all right, like I need to do something about this. Like I'm in my mid 30s and my body feels like I'm in like my mid 50s, and so now I've like really taken that seriously. Now like I walk, like I lift weights now, I eat so much healthier, and like I'm just like so much more productive at work, and I actually look forward to like going on my walks and listening to podcasts and getting my dog to also move around. So yeah, it's a good reminder.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say dogs. Like it's like they push you out of the house. You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you gotta walk them. I mean, kids too, right? Like I have to take my son to the park. Like I meet my now I have like parents, friends at the park. Like the social connections part is so useful. Like to just get out of your like corporate 9 to 5 and talk to other people. Um, so yeah, it's all good. Hope people find the time to do that too.
Yeah. Talk to other humans in Martech. That's what I do full time now, talking to other humans. Appreciate your time, Aboli. This is super fun.